Peashooter, a plant within the PvZ universe who has been put through countless challenges, and I realized that there was one challenge that it hadn't been put through, and that was how long it can survive in PvZ2's Endless. Now at level 1, it would probably lose within the first 2 levels, but what if it was max level? How long would it survive? Well, let's find out. But before we begin, there are a couple of rules that have been put into place. Only Peashooter, no power-ups or Zen Garden, coins earned throughout the challenge can be used to buy plant food, and lastly, a very important rule. Every plant that is put through this challenge will have 3 attempts if I deem that they had bad RNG, and you'll see what I mean by this later on. That was all for the rules. And oh yeah, about 7.2% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, so if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always unsubscribe. Okay, let's begin. I press start game and uselessly choose the Explodovine because of course we're only using the Peashooter. And I start the level by quickly planting a column of Peashooters in the very back. Now I should mention that I chose to do this challenge in modern day because it's the only world that combines all the other zombies into one world, which I feel like is the most fair when trying to test out the plants. And this was easily enough to beat day 1, but it was a little concerning because we already were seeing newspaper zombies. And day 2 is basically identical to day 1, so I'll quickly go over the stats of the max level Peashooter. Its sun cost goes from 100 to 25, its health goes from 300 to 900, its recharge goes from 5 seconds to 2.5 seconds, its damage goes from 20 to 110, and with the mastery levels there are 2 extra benefits added, which is a 1 in 5 chance to plant food whenever placed, and also a 3x boost to the damage via the pierce. So the damage is technically 330. Oh, and there's also a hidden stat that's actually not shown on this screen, and that's that the Peashooter's projectile velocity goes from normal to 2.2 times faster. So basically the peas are fired at 2 times speed. Day 3 seemed like it wasn't going to be too bad even though I added an extra big wave, and to counter this extra big wave I added another column of Peashooters of my own, and it was all going pretty well up until the final wave, which on day 3 already sent a Gargantuar. I thought we wouldn't see these guys until like day 15 or 20. Day 4 similarly to day 3 had 2 flags, so I started off by adding 2 columns of Peashooters, and then a little later added a 3rd column as well. And the final wave of day 4 was also shocking because it brought in the All-Stars, another pretty scary zombie to go up against, but you still beat it. Day 5 also only had 2 flags, and this time I decided to just stick with 2 columns of Peashooters. And as all the portals seemed to only be spawning PSPs, which is short for Poopy Sunfarrow, day 5 was beaten pretty easily. Day 6 upped it even more by adding a 3rd flag. And the level started off by sending a ton of imps and just regular brown coats that were getting completely annihilated. By the first flag I had about 2.5 columns of Peashooters down. By the second flag I had 4. These 2 flags were very easy to beat. And the final flag sent in 2 Gargantuars in the same exact lane, which was a little scary, but as my Peashooters were very over leveled, we easily beat them. But this was a little worrisome because the number of Gargantuars was pretty quickly increasing. In day 7 we went back down to just 1 flag, and by the final wave I had about 2 columns of Peashooters down that easily took out the minimal amount of zombies that were sent. Day 8 was surprisingly also 1 flag, but it was a little more jam-packed than day 7. But again, as only 1 Gargantuar was sent, we were easily able to beat day 8 as well. Day 9 we went back up to 3 flags, so I quickly prepped 2 columns of Peashooters before the first big wave. And it was good that I did because the first big wave was already sending in a Gargantuar. And before the second big wave we had 3 columns down of Peashooters. But surprisingly, the second big wave itself didn't send any Gargantuars, but instead the Gargantuar came in a little later. And right now the Gargantuars are really only being sent in one by one, but later on when they come in groups that can definitely be a problem. But as the final wave only sent in 2 Gargantuars each in separate lanes, we easily beat day 9. Day 10 we went down to 2 flags, and I started off by planting 2 columns of Peashooters that were thankfully able to take down this all-star in the bottom middle lane. But before the final wave was about to come in, I placed a 3rd column. But honestly the final wave itself wasn't very difficult and the 3rd column wasn't really needed. And day 10 was beat. Day 11 started and it only had 1 flag, but it introduced a zombie that could potentially be a threat, and that was the Radio Afro zombie. And they're pretty easy to beat this time, but in the future if they're behind some tanky zombies, they'd definitely be able to play their radio and stall my Peashooters. But thankfully that didn't happen this time and we beat day 11. Day 12 also only had 1 flag, but again teased us with another threat, which was the Chicken Wrangler zombie. And sent in masses, the chickens could get pretty dangerous, but it's almost like the game was teasing us because they'd introduce the zombies but not send too many of them. Again, easily beating day 12. And day 13, all the teasing finally made sense. They introduced the true threat to the Peashooter, the Jester zombie. And my first move was to quickly shovel my Peashooters because because in the Peashooter's case, the only way the Jester can be dealt with is by using the Peashooter to body block, and we have to successfully stall the Jester until the very end of the level. And this was just in case any more Jesters were sent in. But as we're stalling that top Jester, another problem started occurring in the bottom lane, with the All-Star taking out my Peashooter and a Jester and chickens being right behind it, leading to a combo of doom that took out that bottom lane lawnmower. And while I was distracted with that top lane Jester also got very close to the lawnmower. And then for a little bit everything seemed okay, but then out of nowhere a bunch of chickens were sent alongside some more All-Stars. And you might have already noticed something. There's a second Jester in that bottom lane without a lawnmower, which literally means that we lose because there's no way I can take that Jester out. But instead of the Jester, it ended up being the All-Star that actually took us out. And this is what I meant by bad RNG when I was explaining the rules. So of course the Peashooter still has 2 more attempts that we can go through. On the second attempt, however, the RNG was even worse. Days 1 and 2 were pretty simple, but day 3 we were already sent Jesters. So of course I quickly shoveled the 2 Peashooters in the top middle lane and then placed a Peashooter right on top of the Jester to stall it. But as I feared, another portal from the Dark Ages appeared in the bottom middle lane, forcing me to shovel the Peashooter that was in that lane as well. And of course it was a Jester that came out of it. But thankfully it was only these 2 Jesters that were sent, and we're able to survive this level with the use of the lawnmowers. Day 4 was a level with 2 flags, and I ended up going with 3 columns of Peashooters. And even with a Gargantuar set in the very top lane, these defenses were enough to successfully defend against the zombies. But then came in day 5, already throwing 3 flags at us, and you might have guessed it, more Jesters. And as the second portal spawned in the top middle lane, I had my butt clenched, because if a Jester came through that portal, I immediately lose since I have no way to deal damage to it. And sadly, it was a Jester. And at this point, I'd basically given up on the second attempt, as the game spawned another portal in the top middle lane where again, we didn't have a lawnmower. And that top middle lane Jester took us out, ending the second attempt. Let's go on to the third one. Hopefully we get better RNG. Contrasting to the previous attempt, the first 5 levels of this attempt went swimmingly, as our RNG seemed to be on point and we hadn't lost any lawnmowers. But this quickly went downhill with day 6, as the game sent in the Dark Ages portal once again. And it's crazy because every time the Dark Ages portal has come in, it's always been a Jester. We could easily deal with any other zombie in the Dark Ages, but for some reason the game decides to send the one that we can't. And with this level having 2 flags, I tried to stall as best as I could. But as the final big wave was about to come in, the game had sent a Jester in every single lane, which means I was losing all my lawnmowers. And with this Jester being the last one, I just launched the mower by myself. But not all hope was lost, since we'd actually survived. And although day 7 had 3 flags and a very scary Lost City portal, there weren't really any threats sent. And I call the Lost City portal very scary because the Lost City contains another zombie that's just like the Jester, a zombie that the Peashooters can't hit, and that's the Shovel zombie. But thankfully none came through the portals and we beat day 7. Day 8 had a pretty decent amount of Gargantuars, so it was easily beat. 9 had some Gargantuars as well, but again, nothing impossible. Day 10 upped it a lot by having 4 flags. So with my 3 columns of Peashooters and no Gargantuar sent this level, we're easily able to handle day 12 as well. Day 11 only had 1 flag, and the scariest zombie sent in was the All-Star, so it was all looking pretty good. So it was seeming like good RNG was finally coming our way. And day 12 had 2 flags and spawned a Lost City portal, which made me panic a little bit because of course there's still that possibility of a Shovel zombie, but this time it only sent a Dragonfly. But I'd spoken too soon, because 2 seconds after, a Shovel zombie spawned. And this was GG's, because no matter what I did, I couldn't get through it. And as I shoveled my Peashooters towards the front, and I hopelessly planted more Peashooters just to try to stall it, the Peashooters were eventually overwhelmed and the house had been breached. And that was it. And even though it seemed like we had bad RNG on our very first attempt, that was actually the best RNG of the full challenge. And the farthest the Peashooter made it was day 13. Let me know who to try out next. Okay, bye bye.